Hi, my name is Shelley Jacoby. I started out with the Women's Fund. Actually, I was invited to the Power of the Purse by Colleen Fain. And after a few years of hearing the stories at the Power of the Purse, I became intrigued by the organization and became engaged. I started out as a site visitor and once again, having heard the stories now from a different perspective, it continued to intrigue me and became more involved. After being a site visitor for a few years, I was then asked to be on the board by Janet Altman, who was the incoming president at the time. At that point in time, the Women's Fund was moving in a little bit of a different direction, working on advocacy and on getting the message out, not as much with the grant making. So we moved forward in that direction, and it was a very interesting time. I really learned a lot about what was going on in our community from the perspective of the effect on women in general. So after Janet, there was Johnny Hardiman, and then we moved forward. And the new direction that we're taking at this point is back to the grant making. I will say that that is the direction that I am most excited about at this point in time. I'm also very excited about the um, board that we have currently and the direction that we are moving in. The Women's Fund has always been very prominent in our community in terms of the effect on women and girls. So for me personally, one of the reasons that I got involved in the Women's Fund to begin with is that I feel that women are important catalysts in the family, and how it goes for women is how it goes for families, and that it's critical for women to be able to take care of themselves and to take care of their families. And that plays out on so many different levels. Um, the health of the family is very often in the women's hand, and single parent households are primarily with women at the head of that household. So it's a critical piece for the health of our overall community. And so I've always been on board with the Women's Fund from that perspective, and for the social change and systemic change in our community. And I think that that is where the Women's Fund really shines. We are a really good collaboration tool and have always been, and not just providing funds for organizations, although we have done that many times in the past. We were the seed funds for a number of organizations. And as a site visitor, I heard that firsthand from people who had started organizations, and how the fact that they got money from the Women's Fund really gave them clout and the ability to get funds from other organizations, because the Women's Fund had done their homework and selected them as an organization worthy of funding. So it was always comforting to me to know that we not only funded organizations, but we brought together organizations who worked together in a very positive way. We also provided opportunities for these organizations to learn how to run the organization, and help them with some economies of scale by having all of the organizations that had received funding collaborate. So it was on a lot of different levels that the Women's Fund was, very front and foremost in making things happen in our community. So for me personally, learning about a lot of the different organizations that um, are in Miami-Dade County that are working towards making our community a better place is very fulfilling for me. And I love being able to give back in that way through an organization that has the type of power and prestige that the Women's Fund has always had. Um, so looking forward, again, very excited about the board and the direction that we are going in at this point. Our current grant making is very exciting, very thoughtful, and based on a lot of research, which makes a lot of sense and has helped propel us to the next level of where we should be in our quest to help women and girls in Miami-Dade County. Thank you so much for making these interviews happen so that we can keep a herstory or a history of how the Women's Fund has evolved over time and how we continue to be a force in our community moving forward. Thank you.